I actually took the role with them to learn. I wanted to see how they systemized. We built up the first couple. I sold my shares. We bought into another one, started another one. And I was starting to get a little bit burned out. Running restaurants is the most boring job. It's exactly the same thing every day. The only thing that's different is who called in sick. You can't mandate culture. You create culture, right? It's the discipline of treating your people correctly, paying them when you promised they would get paid, because that's important to them, right? And understanding what it is about the culture that they need or you need to make it successful. Simon Sinek says, start with the why. Are we here to create community? Are we here to create jobs? Are we trying to, help people in certain ways? Are we trying to give back? When I was a kid, after a dentist appointment, we used to always go or to Dairy Queen, and that's what they were coming back for. I mean, the food was great, the burgers are good, the ice cream's good, but you're coming back for that emotional connection. The reason I was moved here was to help manage that group. Just wouldn't live up to or couldn't live up to expectations or recommendations. If you're going to hire people, are you a good boss? Are you somebody who has empathy and understands that? Or do you think by yelling at them, you're going to intimidate them? And I've seen lots of corners cut in a number of brands. I was walking around one of the big malls early before they really opened, and there was bags of raw chicken sitting on the floor.
So hi everybody, welcome to the Business Academy. Today we have Dave Acton, ex-CEO of Four Fingers. He loves talking about businesses. He has his own consultancy company that has ran for over 17 years now, and he's been traveling all about Asia, America, and so many stories that he would like to share with us today, and also things that we want to pick his mind about. So Dave.
Super privileged to have you today with us, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I've seen that, you've actually done quite a bit with different companies and MNCs, right? But I think, to me personally, what I feel that is most impressive about your experience and your CV is that you were helping Pizza Hut scale in the past. And why I would debate or argue that is more impressive than the work you've done at Four Fingers was that, back then you didn't have any technology to work with, right? There was not a Xerox accounting system. There was not lots of digital marketing that you could play with. What are your thoughts?
There was some, actually, and if you go back even further, I always say I started in marketing before the internet was invented. So back in the old days when we had to hand draw and we had to letter things, I remember getting a laser printer and a computer, thinking that was amazing. And then I transitioned from marketing. I became really good at marketing restaurants and bars, so I could put butts in chairs or bums in seats. And that evolved then to, we should open our own restaurant, a couple of buddies and I. So I was 25 and we opened one. We actually had two when I was 25. Mm-hmm. And we ran our own restaurants, and we were making it up as we went. I mean, we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't have an education or a background in it. And we did really well. We built up the first couple. I sold my shares. We bought into another one, started another one, bought and sold. And I was starting to get a little bit burned out because of the lack of systems, the lack of technology, the lack of those tools. And I thought there had to be a better way. At the time, Pizza Hut was part of the PepsiCo company. PepsiCo owned KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, Long John Silver's, a couple of others. And at the time, combined, ran over 30,000 restaurants, which blew my mind. How can you run 30,000 restaurants? I run two. I'm exhausted. So I actually took the role with them to learn. I wanted to see how they systemize, how they
Scale.
Yeah, how they scale. And it was fascinating. But we did have technology, and to a certain extent. This was in those magic days where you phoned, and the guy on the other end of the phone in 30 minutes processed your order, ran your credit card, and got it to your house. There was no GPS. This was all before all of that. But we had mapping software. So when we put your postal code or your address in, it gave us a grid on a map, right? A, 1, 2, 3, and a zone. So we knew roughly where it was. And I had a great run with them, and this was in Canada. I was outside of Toronto, and I was doing well with them. I was getting promoted. And they approached me in 1998 and asked if I would be on the task force to help them through the Y2K crisis that was coming. Now, That's a long time ago, and a lot of people don't remember it. But most people thought the world was going to stop. Planes were going to fall out of the sky. And they wanted me to help roll out new software to all of the Pizza Huts in Canada. I was going to be part of it. We could do 2 a day every day. We had 1,000 to do, and we had 400 days to do it. So the math didn't work, right? We just knew we were going to think. And I politely declined and took a different job with a different company. And that was an ice cream and burger brand called Dairy Queen, which some people know. They had a presence here in Southeast Asia, but it's owned by Warren Buffett. So, who else better to learn from was Warren Buffett. So I had a great run with it, and it really was, to your point, learning experience, managing that many restaurants and keeping everything on track. They were so far ahead of their time. This was in mid-90s, 95, 96. I would pay a bill. I would put that bill in an envelope. Every week, the envelope would get FedEx to Wichita, Kansas, which was the support center. They scanned it using OCR, optical character recognition. And then within a week, I could phone and say, I paid a bill last month. Here's my store number. And the bill was $235. Oh, yeah, that's Bob's Plumbing. They could pull it up. Mind-blowing. I know guys who run restaurants today who still don't have that kind of system in place, right? They can't pull up that and can't manage their money. So it was a fascinating experience, and I really, truly learned how the systems and discipline of running restaurants is the key to success. And I think it translates into a lot of business. If you don't have that system and discipline and process, then it's very difficult to scale. It's very difficult to step out of the day-to-day. And a lot of people I talk to and I hear from, that's the biggest stumbling block, is the business them. If they don't check in every day, or if they don't manage the process or manage the books or something, the whole thing falls apart. And then you're really not ready to scale. You're not at a point where you're ready to move on. So
why did Dairy Queen fail in Singapore then?
So Dairy Queen's a great story. They've been here 2 or 3 times, and I correlate them to a lot of other brands. They're a franchise business. So most brands come and go in Singapore based on franchising, a lot of markets. They do a master franchise where you have the rights for the country. And we've all seen A&W come and go and come back, and we've seen other brands come and go. And you buy the rights, and then you run the brand to the franchisor's specifications, but you have ultimate responsibility in the market. The franchisee that they had chosen here, which was before my time, but the reason I was moved here was to help manage that group, just wouldn't live up to, or couldn't live up to, expectations or recommendations. In F&B, there's a number of factors. Rent is a big one, and they kept scaling down the rent. They would take the smallest, cheapest, hardest to find unit because it was cheaper.
Right.
Looked good on the P&L.
Right.
Customers
No
across
footfall.
the street. There's no footfall. They're on the wrong side. They're on the back of something.
I see.
They're on the highest floor, and nobody climbs that high. And we had a number of recommendations and suggestions and strategies that we put in place for them, and they just couldn't execute. I should say wouldn't execute. I mean, they were capable. They just didn't seem to have the desire to push into it like they needed to. And then it's like spinning your tires in the mud, right? You're not getting anywhere. And then eventually it goes back down again. Your lease comes up, as we see in the news, leasing is the big dragon in the market right now. But landlords are landlords. I mean, they're in business too. Their lease is 2 years or 3 years or whatever you sign, and rent's going to go up. I mean, the real estate went up, the price went up, everything's going to go up, but sales don't. So if sales aren't going to leap at the 3-year anniversary mark, then you can see the writing on the wall. You're not going to have an increase in net profit. You're going to just spend more on your rent, and you see brands pull out. We've seen it with Five Guys already here in Singapore, right? They're starting to backpedal already, and stores are closing, things are shrinking, and it's just it's the cycle, but it's inevitable if you don't keep growing and building your business.
What are some key lessons that you learned from running the operations in Pizza Hut that helped you in?
Well, discipline is the biggest one. I often say that running restaurants is the most boring job in the world. It's exactly the same thing every day. The only thing that's different is who called in sick or what did the supplier short you, some little issue, right? But, you do 1,000 covers a day, you have, 1,500 customers a day, whatever it is. If you look at most P&Ls and sales journals, restaurants do the same basic volume every day, every week, every month, every year. It's consistent. And you need to be comfortable in that structure, right? If you're somebody who needs the ever-changing, fast evolving world around you, then maybe it's operating a restaurant's not the right role for you. But to make it work, you need to be disciplined. You need to have the structure in place. The schedule is done and posted on the same day every week, so the staff can count on it. If the staff can't count on the schedule being done, they're going to go somewhere else. Then you're going to be struggling for staff. If the food order's not placed on time, you don't get the ingredients in time. If the inventory isn't done every week, then you're not going to have a good sense of what your P&L looks like. You're not going to really understand your numbers. You've got to file the form, you've got to do the payroll, and it's discipline. It's just doing the same thing over and over again. And it's boring. It's exciting if you like that kind of structure, but if you're somebody that needs the lights and the excitement, then actually running a restaurant's probably not the right role.
I think most businesses or business owners, they like to do something new every time or like keep changing operations. Sometimes about doing the same thing, same mundane, boring thing, having that discipline to do it. Yeah. And even in a franchise where SOPs are, in a way, it's quite fixed every for every like restaurant, right? SOP.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually 80-85% set, right?
Yeah.
Recipes don't change. The process of cooking the chicken or, processing the ingredients, that's done. I mean, you're going to have a little bit of flexibility in opening times or how you lay out your restaurant or how you handle certain situations. Local store marketing can be, it can be something that changes on a regular basis, or you can flex a little bit there. But basically, that's usually why you're buying a franchise. You want that discipline.
The
You want
SOPs
those
and the structure.
The SOPs are what really ensure execution, and execution needs to be consistent right around the world. Big Mac is a Big Mac. It's a Big Mac. It shouldn't change. If you don't have that commitment to the discipline, then you're going to struggle with the format of a franchise. And one of the areas I often consult with is people they're thinking about buying a franchise and they're not sure if it's right for them. I mean, how did you do your NS service, right? If you're not somebody who responds well to that discipline and that rigid structure, then franchising is not the right way for you.
What if we localize it to businesses here? Like, let's say if I want to start a food court stall or a restaurant in the local market here, and facing the issues that most business owners face, like high rents, like you mentioned before, even staffing, right? There's not a lot of Singaporeans that want to work and earn the amount of wages that we're offering for people in the F&B industry. They always have to seek abroad for help, like Malaysians and so on. But there's also issues with the quota. So how would you consult or advise someone that is looking to do something besides just a franchise or something on their own? Like,
yeah, it's a great question. And this market is definitely a difficult market from a labor point of view. But again, there's discipline, there's structure, right? When you look at the research, why people leave a job, why people exit a position, high turnover, the ones that usually come near the top are, I didn't know what I was doing. I felt uncomfortable. I felt out of place. I never got the hang of it. Or bad manager, right? I mean, people don't leave jobs. They leave bad managers as a buzzword. So when I look at somebody who's setting up a business, whether it's a food court or a stall or whatever, if you're going to hire people, are you a good boss? Are you somebody who has empathy and understands that? Or do you think by yelling at them, you're going to intimidate them, right? I shop at food courts. I go to hawker centers. My wife and I go out, and I can see the ones where, the guy on the grill or the guy who's doing the wok hay can't let go of that, and all yell at people. And if it's not his wife or his daughter or his son, he's not going to keep those staff. Yeah. So, I think the discipline of being a good employer is where you need to think of that as the goal, right? The end goal. So make sure you've got the right attitude for managing people. And then secondly, that the whole discipline of your training program, bring people in. Like, in the old days, in the bar business, when I was young, we used to say, I hired somebody that had a pulse. Great, right? We just needed a warm body. Like literally, that was the job interview, right? And
You're
then
hired.
and then the first week it's, well, stand here, and when the tables are dirty, go clean the table. Well, okay, I get that, but I've had to teach people how to mop floors because they grew up in Singapore, they helper, they've never mopped a floor. They don't know how to do it. They don't know what to clean the table with because the helper always does it. So have your discipline, have your structure of, this is what the onboarding looks like. Here's the first 10 days. This is the training program. We want you to understand everything that goes on. Maybe you're just going to be a cashier, but you need to know the menu. If you're front facing and I ask you if there's anchovies in the laksa, they need to know that, right? They need to understand the menu. They don't have to know how to cook it, but they should spend a day in the kitchen. They should know how it works. They should see how the flow of the dishes go, or the crockery, or they need to have all of that stuff as part of the onboarding. But time and again, you see people, it's like, oh, I'm short today, just come in, just stand here, or just do what I tell you. And then there's no pleasure, there's no joy, they don't feel like they know what they're doing, they're not going to come back. They're not going to come back by the second or third shift.
Yep.
So let's just say if someone were to buy a franchise, then mention everything about all the SOPs and onboarding and everything. So will this be done by like a centralized training program?
It depends on the brand. A lot of brands do, and a lot of brands will. Well, it depends on the level as well. I should break that down. Initially, when you start, if you're starting with one unit, you're going to have some sort of international training system, right? Typically, you're going to go to Australia, or you're going to go to the UK, or you're going to go wherever their master training center is, and you'll get trained. Dairy Queen required 3 people per unit to go. Different brands have different. Subway has 1 person per. Right now, they're supposed to go to Australia if they work for Subway, if you buy a Subway. Once you've gotten past that, part of that training should be training you to be a trainer. So Leo, you've bought a franchise. You've bought Dave's. I can't say Dave's Chicken anymore because they just sold a big chain called Dave's Chicken. You've bought Leo's Chicken, and you're gonna be our franchisee. We'll give you all the things you need to train the people downstream underneath. You're gonna have to add a few things in, tell them what day payday is, tell them how you do the schedule. But for the most of it, 90% of it's going to be done for you, and that's part of buying a franchise. The training program should be laid out. There should be a 10-day or 21-day or whatever it is, depending on the scale of a structured program that all new employees go through. If it's particularly complicated, or if it was a fine dining restaurant, you might separate, kitchen people are kitchen people, front of house or front of house. But any good restaurant is going to have crossover, where the kitchen guys understand what happens on the floor, and the floor guys understand what happens in the kitchen, so that they can empathize with their coworkers and they can get along. But yeah, to your point, it should be part of the kit that you get when you buy a franchise.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, the structure is all laid out for you, but whether or not you, I guess, strictly follow it still depends on your discipline.
The discipline of following the program, right? If you don't have discipline to follow the structure that's laid out for you, then you can't expect the same results, right? I mean, the analogy of, I followed this recipe perfectly, except I substituted banana for butter, and I don't understand why it didn't turn out. Because you didn't follow it perfectly, right? You need to follow the program. Now, franchisors make mistakes, and they don't always get it right. So it's good to push back a little bit. And there should be a good franchisor will have an ear to the franchisee and understand, the local tweaks that need to be done. But you should be committing to following the program. If you're making a Big Mac and you don't like onions, doesn't mean you get to leave the onions out, right? You have to make it the same way. You've got to build the restaurant the way the franchisor wants it built, because there's those elements add together to make it successful. And if you start pulling them out, then it's going to collapse.
I think a big issue with franchising, like the SOPs, are copy paste, right? They're pretty easy to follow once you've understood the discipline discipline that's required and the time that's needed, effort, whatever. But I think one of the most difficult things for people, especially maybe someone who's just taking over a franchise, is having to do with the culture. Maybe the culture doesn't suit the SOPs, or SOPs don't suit the culture, like which one comes first. And for managers, for business owners who just took over a franchise that they don't really enjoy the culture about, do they try to change it from within, or do they just fire everyone, replace them with a whole team, a new culture from there? What are your kind of takes on that?
I think that's a great question, a great point. I mean, culture comes from the top down, but you can't dictate it. You can't mandate culture. You create culture, right? It's the discipline of treating your people correctly, paying them when you promised they would get paid, not shorting them, not trying to cheat them on hours, sending the schedule out when the schedule comes out, and being disciplined around it, because that's important to them, right? And understanding what it is about the culture that they need or you need to make it successful. So I think, would I fire everybody? No, I would always try and steer the culture in a new direction. It's a big ship, and it takes a long time to turn a ship, cruise turn on a dime. But I think you're better off to try and make those changes slowly and subtly. And if you do it right, and if the staff buys in, if you make that culture change collaborative, listen to what they say, listen to what they want, then there's buy-in, and you're going to have an even stronger culture. There's going to be ownership. There's going to be strength in your organization because the team has created that together, right? They asked for it, you delivered. So if I was to buy a restaurant or buy a business, any business, and I wasn't happy on day one, I felt there was, issues with the culture, I'd have an all-hands meeting, or I'd break up into as many meetings as needed to get to the root of the problem.
I see.
And try and determine what's missing, what's lacking. Because a bad culture comes from somewhere.
Yep.
I mean, it's not something that just happens overnight. It evolves, and it can be evolved back in whichever way you want it to go. Sometimes there's a challenge. You said earlier where, say, a Western culture or an American culture, Australian culture comes in, and the brand says, this is the way it's going to be done. It's one of the things I talked about today on a LinkedIn post is that arrogance of, this is the way it's done. We know how it works, so we're going to tell you how you're going to do it. Some people blame that for a business failing, and I will agree, in the eyes of the end user, the customer, that arrogance and that not listening to what the customer wants is the downfall. But the franchisor is going to give you the basics, that 80%, that 90%, and then it is really up to you to build the culture around your mission, vision, values, your own culture, and your should be a reflection of you, your person, right? So
I was going to ask and actually touch on that a little bit as well, because I think part of your system setter at Dairy Queen, and you have to ensure they're following all the SOPs, and culture was being inbuilt by from state to state in different countries. That gets lost in translation sometimes, very different, like West, East. And I think if we just work backwards a bit more, then from the get-go, from just opening up a new store franchise itself, what certain frameworks or checklists do you have in terms of hiring? Like, what kind of people do you look out for? What kind of questions do you ask? How do you know that this, maybe server, manager, waiter, or whatever, suits the role?
I think it's very hard to answer that with one answer, because it's like choosing a tool in the toolbox, right? If you just have a toolbox full of hammers, then that's not going to get the job done, right? So there's a business principle, an old business principle called the Peter principle, which I refer to a lot. Dr. something Peter created it. But people get hired or get promoted to their level of incompetence. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but the example I often use is we hire a girl. She's going to be a hostess at the restaurant. We give her the menus, we tell her the table numbers. We don't do a good job training her, but we show her around, and she just seats people. Hi, how many people, sit here. That's all she does. But she's great. She smiles. People love her. Customers like her. She's helpful. So, hey, we should give her a chance. We'll make her a bus boy or a bus girl. Right? So we promote her. So now she's picking up dishes and stuff, and she does well. Hey, you should be a waitress. So we promote her. Right? And we keep promoting her. And she becomes a bartender. Works in the kitchen, whatever. We keep promoting her. We make her the assistant manager, and then she does really well. And then one day we make her the manager of her own store, and she sucks.
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? Is it? Did we promote her higher than her level of competency? Did we train her? Did we show her what those steps are? Did we give her the book, or did we just assume, oh, she's so good here, we'll make her be great there? And we never put people back to where they're really good, right? To that level of competence. So the answer to your question is, what makes somebody good? It depends entirely on the job. What makes somebody good in the kitchen does not usually translate to making them good in the front of the house. And I often say, what makes somebody a great cook does not make them a good restaurant owner.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about that one day. Like, just because you're really good at cooking does not mean you're going to be able to handle customer service, ordering, discipline of bills and inventory and all those other things. It's two completely different sets of skills. Now you can cross over, you can learn, and you can grow, and you can excel in those, but not everybody does. So.
I think a good owner also knows how to identify the best people to put them in the position that they're best at.
Yeah.
And not so it's always about figuring out is this person good for this role? And if you make the wrong choice, and you put a good person but in a completely wrong role for him, then there's no point in that.
Yeah, it's one of the things I do when I'm running a restaurant or a shift, or I'm helping out. But when we're going into the heavy revenue period, Friday night dinner is one of the biggest revenue periods of restaurants. Your aces are in their places. The best people are in the place that they're the best at. Not the place they like the best, not it's where they're best at. And you put your aces in their places on those busy nights, those high. On a Tuesday lunch hour, that's the great time for you guys to switch, right? Maybe you're not so good in the back of the house, but we're gonna put you back there for Tuesday lunch because it's a chance to flex, right? Build up the skill, build up the muscle memory, build up the discipline. So you switch them around. But then when it gets busy, it gets people back to where they need to be. I see a lot of restaurant managers and owners who will say, oh, they don't like working in the kitchen, but they're really good at it. So if you let them get away into the front and they're not good at it, you're going to end up letting them go, because they're going to end up, failing, falling down, hitting that Peter level where their level of incompetence. And then usually they get fired. They don't get sent back to where they're good at. Right? So,
and it's not fair for them also.
Exactly. It's very unfair. I see it so many times where people, and then they get burned out, or they get bitter about the business or bitter about the brand, and you lose a really good line cook because you tried to promote them too high, and maybe you didn't train them. Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe you didn't train them. Maybe you didn't set them up for success. But because of that, you've not only lost them, but now you've got a bigger hole to fill.
So now that you've instilled all the discipline, you've trained them well, you've chosen the right staff, the right people, how would you then implement a culture in the company or in the organization?
I think you need to identify what your culture is going to be about, right? Mission, vision, values is the buzzword we all use, but what are the things that make you tick? Why are you in business? Simon Sinek says, start with the why. So identify your why. Are we here just to make money? That's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a business that's focused on making money and nothing but. But are we here to create community? Are we here to create jobs? Are we trying to, help people in certain ways? Are we trying to give back? So once you've identified whatever your North Stars are, whatever the things you're driving your mission, then you break it down into values and then lay in the elements that are going to align with that, make it work. There's basics like paying people on time, as I said, and all those things of treating people right. And if you don't have that as a foundation, I think it's very hard to create any form of culture. But know where you want to go, and then figure out those paths to get there. Depending on where you want to go, the paths are usually different. But I think any company that gives back small percentage somehow, whether it's a charitable program or a donation, doesn't have to be public. It can be behind the scenes, but it makes the team feel better about what they're doing.
Mm.
Being fair and open about time off and PTO, and restaurants are open evenings and weekends and public holidays. So, don't abuse your staff. Give them a day off when it's good for them, to make up for the time they had to work National Day or they had to work New Year's Eve or whatever it is, right? There's ways to make the team come together, and there's no one right way, but if you listen, the staff will usually let you know, the team will usually let you know. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is having in that open communication and an open ear.
I think a franchisor can only give you like the general guidelines, but like it's still up to you whether you want to like treat your staff right.
Yeah.
And as long as you build people, I think the people will build the business themselves.
Absolutely. And it's kind of paraphrasing one of the ways I describe franchising for people. It's kind of like the brand has the guardrails on the highway, right? On the PIE, there's guardrails. It's up to you, the franchisee, to choose which lane you're going to drive in, right? Are you going to be really aggressive in the fast lane and try and build this business overnight? Then you're in the fast lane. Are you going to be slow, steady? Maybe you're going to be on the left side. Maybe you're in the middle lane. But that's up to you. And it's the same with culture, and it's the same with everything else. If you want to be in the fast lane, you need to have your car tuned. You got to have good tires, good brakes, everything's got to be aligned and working well. If your engine's not firing so good, then stay over in the slow lane so that you're not a danger, right? But it's up to you to choose which lane you want to drive in. It's the guardrails of the franchisor that will make you successful and keep you on the path, on the road.
Would you say like buying a franchise would be like a easier version, like running a business on easy mode compared to like building an entirely new business itself?
It can be. If you're not the right fit, then it's a square peg in a round hole, right? If you're not somebody who can take direction, if you're an individual or a company that needs to be in charge, if you're going to push back on everything, then franchise is not right, because you're going to be pushing outside those guardrails. If we're a brand and we come into town and you say, yeah, but I want to sell lox. Okay, well, we don't have rice on the menu. We don't have any of those ingredients on the menu. Is it worth a good franchisor listen and maybe talk about it, but don't go wildly off in all directions without consulting and without working together as a team. So if you're somebody who says, I'm going to buy a franchise and I'm going to turn it into something else, or I want to make it my own, then it's not the right fit, right? You need to have that franchisee mindset that you're going to be, you're together, you're stronger, and you're going to be the same, as all the others. You want to be the best of the group, but you want them all to be, and they should smell the same way, they should look the same way, should be using the same ingredients. Franchisors don't want to waste time chasing all those little details, and it's a partnership, right? I mean, you're coming together saying, we're going to work together to do this. You should be sticking to the rules, sticking to the playbook, because the playbook's what makes it work. But if that's not the right mindset for you, then run away.
Yeah, I have some friends who are like looking to start businesses, and some of them like they say, oh, I want to buy a BFT, chain, or buy F45. Yeah, and they think it's easy, but actually it's still not, because you have to still pay like quite a high upfront cost.
Yeah, you're usually paying more in some cases, because there's the franchise fee, which is just a fee for the services you're buying. If we use the gym as an example, but if your friends have never run a gym, they don't have that intimate knowledge of what's involved, then how many machines do they buy? How many towels should they buy? How many square feet per customer? Those are the things that a franchisor can do for you, right? They'll have a template. They'll have a system in place that's 90% of the way there, and then it's up to you to figure out, is this the right part of town, or which tower is more popular? Where do I want to be? So the franchisor is not always going to have that local real estate knowledge, but it's a great way to get into the business and not have to invent it from the beginning. But if you're somebody, and keep going back to restaurants, because people who cook think they can do a better job. I can make a better burger than McDonald's. Absolutely. Don't buy a McDonald's if you think you can make a better burger. Go make your own burger. Go make Nicholas's burgers, and don't try and change McDonald's or change whatever burger brand you're buying to fit you. Stick to the program.
But I think the only downside to buying a franchise is like, I guess, the upfront costs, and you still have to pay like royalties every month.
But then as a brand, you're stronger, right? I mean, what's the second biggest sub chain in Singapore? Subway sandwiches or Submarine sandwich. What's the second biggest chain? Nobody knows, right? The power of Subway is the brand. So it's worth 4 cents or 6 cents on every dollar because you're buying that brand, right? When you open up your Grab app at night and you see brands you recognize, you buy. You see the ones, usually it's on the flash sale, and it's like, I've never even heard of these people, right? Now, good for them. They're trying, they're starting out. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but they're desperate for sales because there's no brand recognition. So the value of a brand is what that royalty and that ongoing, those ongoing payments are for, right? You're going to be, if you open 2 gyms side by side and one's an F45 and one's just Leo's, guarantee you F45 is going to have higher initial signups. Now, how you run your business determines a long-term success, right? An independent gym will start slower, but maybe a better value offering. Maybe it has nicer machines, nicer equipment, nicer facilities, nicer attitude. You could do 100 things different from an F45. F45 sticks to the program. There are some people who don't respond well to the F45 program. They don't like that structure, right? They don't like that. They want to go somewhere else where they can do their own and come and go as they please. There's pros and cons. So long-term success, it's what you want to make out of it. But that brand recognition is the value is the brand recognition. That's why you're paying that expense, because they've already done it. They've made all the mistakes. And again, you know, as we said, you got the manuals, you got the training, you've got all of that as part of the package.
Let's say someone is looking to buy a franchise, then what does a franchisor typically, like let's just say comparing BFT versus F45, for example, or like let's just say franchise A versus franchise B, what makes a franchisor better than another franchisor?
Which makes the franchisor better, or
franchisor, the franchisor a better choice to?
Yeah, I think it's fit is the biggest thing I would say. You know, it goes back to mission, vision, values. If I was buying a franchise, I would spend as much time as I could with them understanding their mission, vision, values. Why are they in business? And I would interview other franchisees to see, you know, what are the pros and cons? What's the support like? What's the strength? Most people who buy a franchise will very happily tell you whether they're happy or not happy. You know, if I was going to buy a Subway tomorrow, I'd be out knocking on as many Subway franchisees as I could find around town and say, hey, I just want to know how it's going. You're not really competing with them, right? An F45 or a BFT gym, you're not competing with other F45s. The franchisees are going to know that more F45s makes our brand stronger. So they're going to be happy to share, but if it's not a good experience, they're going to share that too. So, always the first thing I ever say is get out and interview the franchisees.
Yeah.
If you're buying the master rights for a country, then fly to Korea or fly to Cambodia or wherever else they are and speak to the owners and operators and the managers and just see what it's like, because you can't hide the support. If the franchisor support is not there, it will be very evident in your conversations with other franchisees.
What made Dairy Queen do really well in some countries, and you know, in some countries like Singapore, it didn't really take off?
It's fascinating to me because the strength of the Dairy Queen brand, and we can apply this to other ones, in North America, Canada, the US, Mexico, it's the neighborhood ice cream place or the burger place. I mean, they have kind of a split identity where they're burgers, fries, ice cream. They're all about community. They're all about neighborhood. They're all about getting people to come after the baseball game or after the football game or on your first date when you're 17, you know, that kind of atmosphere. And then in the big cities, yes, there are Dairy Queen in a big mall, and It's not a neighborhood Dairy Queen, but you go to that mall Dairy Queen and have an ice cream or a burger, and it makes you think of back home, right? It makes you think of all those, my
Nostalgia.
neighborhood Dairy Queen. When you get abroad, when you try to roll that out here, there's no history, there's no memories, there's no connection to the brand. Tim Hortons is the one that I was speaking with a couple of weeks ago. Tim Hortons is a hugely successful chain in Canada. There's more Tim Hortons than there are McDonald's. I think 1 out of every 10 cups of coffee in Canada has a Tim Hortons cup of coffee.
Oh.
It's massive, but it's a community coffee place. Towns celebrate. They have a parade when Tim Hortons finally opens a location, because now they're no longer a village; they're a town, right? Like it's developed. You've hit a level. You give directions based on the Tim Hortons, right? And 3 blocks past the Timmy's, turn left. I mean, it's a landmark. It's an institution, and it's where everybody goes, whether the coffee's good or not. And now they've come to Southeast Asia. They've come to Thailand, Singapore. They're into China, and it's just a coffee chain in the mall. There isn't that connection
draw
with the location. Now, people like me, they're like, oh my God, Tim's is here. Great. I go in and I get my nostalgia, but it's different coffee. It's made differently. It's barista based here. It's a pour over back home. So the brand has really shifted its focus and living on the brand. We were talking about Dairy Queen, what makes them successful back in their, and it's more of a community restaurant. Dairy Queen, Tim Hortons was the other example. If you're going to be a community based, like a food court here, right? If you live in an H&B, that food court or coffee shop, that becomes like the neighborhood hub, right? That's where the people all go. I go down and people see me, they know me better than they know my wife. It's becomes the hub. You can't pick that up and move it and expect it to happen just based on the brand. S11 doesn't just automatically create a community whenever they put the sign up. You need to build that and nurture that. You can live off the memory, and you can get those people who buy the coffee or buy the burger or the ice cream because it's nostalgic and it's memorable and it's a nice warm fuzzy. But you've got to build that, and you need to become part of the culture. There are lots of brands like Dairy Queen's done very well in Thailand, done very well in Cambodia and other markets where they become part of the community. Birthday cakes are a big deal in Thailand, that they do a huge dollar in ice cream cakes for birthdays, but they've built the stores close to the shopping center, close to the outdoor of the shopping center, so you pick up your ice cream cake after you bought your groceries and you've gone home. Brands that have adopted or leaned into delivery have done well because they create that community, that emotional connection to it. But just sticking a sign up at the mall, I mean, you'll get some trial, and then if it's not good enough for people to come back, if the intent to reorder isn't there, then you won't get that long-lasting presence.
So it's like community culture.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it successful back in Canada and the US, right? It starts as a community, and then you get an emotional connection to it. The highest volume opening of a Dairy Queen I ever worked on was in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, which is way above the Arctic Circle in Canada. It's way up there. It's a mining town, and we opened up, and we had one of the largest openings the brand had ever seen for the first 14 days. And it was all these people who'd grown up somewhere else, and they were so excited for a taste of home to come back and try that thing. And I had so many people in the parking lot say, oh, my grandfather used to take me to Dairy Queen, or when I was a kid after a dentist appointment we used to always go, or my mom, it was our tradition. And that's what they were coming back for. I mean, the food was great, the burgers are good, the ice cream's good, but you're coming back for that emotional connection, right? It's why when you travel, Singaporeans, when they travel and they get a noodle shop, or they get laksa, or they get something that tastes like home, they get excited about it.
A rush.
I mean, my wife's Singaporean. We're traveling in Turkey. We'd been on the road for a month, and we had to finally hunt down a Chinese restaurant because just missed that. And I had to admit, I missed too. I missed the rice. I missed those flavors, right? And we tracked one down. We found one that was close, and we were excited. That's what makes it successful.
At Dairy Queen, then, besides worrying about the blizzards topping over during sales, what were your key challenges you faced, the toughest moments?
In Southeast Asia, supply chain's the big one. When I first came over, when I started working over here in 2010, the supply chain wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. I mean, a lot has happened between then. The brand was also very focused on American or using the ingredients from home. I wouldn't say American, but Canadian, American, other markets, but they had to be private label products, ingredients that were made for us. So until we started to get momentum, we could start to localize local flavors, toppings, ingredients. Supply chain was big. We were bringing containers of stuff over, right? You're trying to predict 6 months from now how many boxes are you going to go through. And paper goods are one thing, but when you're dealing with the perishable, frozen, and the fresh food, it becomes very tricky. That was probably the biggest challenge. The brand, I think, does well with local consumers, and in Singapore and outside of Singapore, there's a great range of tastes and profiles, but making the economics work from a supply chain point of view, and then getting the right location within a mall. Like any mall or any area, which unit you have has a lot to do with how successful. The footfall. We talked about the visibility, and if you're not going to step up and take the right units, then you have to expect that your sales are going to suffer or be lower performing than you want.
Comparing like ice cream margins versus bubble tea margins, if let's say everything else is equalized, footfall, same branding, same pricing ish, which one would give a better return for people thinking of starting their own niche or brands like that?
It depends on if everything is equal. I mean, the cost of goods is going to be the same, but bubble tea is local ingredients, right? There's no branded candies in a bubble tea typically, right? You're dealing with tapioca balls, you're dealing with brown sugar, you're dealing with milk, so you can buy that anywhere. Now you buy it where it's approved and make sure it's all the other things that the franchisor is in line. But if you're setting up an ice cream shop, your cost of goods is going to run higher because cream is more expensive than tea, first of all. Your ingredients are going to be branded candies or expensive mix-in. Even nuts are going to cost more than tapioca balls. So now you need a higher selling price to make the same margin, right? If you're going to keep a 30% cost of goods, your selling price is higher. So if it's 3:00 in the afternoon and you need a little treat, you want a little pick-me-up, is a $3 bubble tea or a $6 ice cream? Mm-hmm. So your sticker shock is a challenge. So I think that one of the reasons bubble teas have done so well is it's a relatively inexpensive or affordable treat. It's got good mouthfeel. It's got good, it's got stuff in it. It's not just a can of Coke or a bottle of water or a flavored drink. There's something to it, and I think that resonates with people. It scratches the itch, so to speak. I think there's still a lot of room in that beverage category. I think we'll see, we saw juice not come and go, but we saw Boost juice and some of those things, and there was a lot of fresh juices, and now bubble teas, and Chaggy's the next big thing.
Yeah, they went IPO recently.
Yeah, so and they're doing well. They're opening a lot of stores. We're not sure bottom line how they're doing because they haven't released those figures yet. But brands come and go, and they're obviously leaning into it, put a lot of money into it, which is great. And we'll see how it goes. But I think that beverage category is going to continue to grow. It's going to be because it's a meal replacement. People will have one for lunch or for on the go. It's a cool down. It's a pick me up. It's a date night. It's let's go have bubble tea on Tuesday afternoon or tonight after work. And
yep.
And when you look at the younger generations, they're not into alcohol. They're not into the traditional things. So it's definitely an oncoming trend.
What about you were mentioning a little bit on getting your certifications, the food safety and all that, although the cheaper margins, and with your experiences and I think things you've seen in the industry, other MNCs, have you seen certain cases where the ethical guidelines were breached, or they were just doing things more a bit more for profit and foregoing certain human values in the
Yeah,
pursuit of that?
yeah. I mean, I've seen lots of corners cut in a number of brands. You know, I don't really want to
Of course.
name names, but I've seen everything from, you know, poor sanitary conditions. I've seen breaches in temperature. You know, where chicken. I still remember one of my first weekends in Singapore, and I was walking around one of the big malls early before they really opened, and there was bags of raw chicken sitting on the floor because the staff weren't here yet, and you know, stuff like that. Those shortcuts that nobody got sick, nobody died, so they do it and they push it a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and eventually something blows up, right? Eventually there's
E. coli breakouts. Right?
E. coli or the TikTok office
Oh, yeah.
issue a couple of months ago where 60 or 80 people got sick. I mean, it's just shortcuts on food safety and practices that you just got to be a little, every time you're a little bit more outside those guardrails, and then something goes wrong. So
Were there, I guess, cases personally facing you when you were, you know, in that kind of position where you were having to kind of deal with ethical dilemmas like that?
yeah, I've closed stores in the middle of the day in my past life, and you know, you've read my resume, so you can figure out which brands. But I have turned the key and locked the door and said, no, this store is closed until further notice. I've terminated franchises because there was abuse, continued abuse.
Right.
I mean, it's all done legally and by the book, but I've seen people lose their business because they just didn't want to follow the rules, and they're franchisor rules, but the franchisor is trying to prevent a scandal, or you know, I mean, franchisor rules are usually tighter than the bare minimum, right? So you follow the franchisor's rules because it's the franchisor and you agreed to that. If you're a little bit outside, you're probably still within the code, the local code, but you're starting to stack up potential
It's also
damages.
brand reputation.
Well, and that's why the brand has got the tighter rules, right? Because they can't risk it at
Image.
all. They don't want that any hint of a
Scandal.
issue, and stuff happens, and people miss the rule, or you know, it's supposed to be 2 hours and it was 2.5, and it starts to become an issue. But you know, maybe the government says, oh, you can go 3 hours. Well, we want 2 because there's a reason why, right? And did we all agree on what time it started? So you know, you keep those margins of error tight, and that's what makes a brand. I mean, it's why there's always usually a more consistent product around the world. A Big Mac is a Big Mac. A Dairy Queen ice cream is the same thing, whether it's in Cambodia or Cambridge. It should taste the same, and that's part of being a brand.
Ethical breaches aside, like what other things that you see restaurant owners, business owners do that's completely just burning cash for no reason? Why are you spending money on this? You shouldn't be doing that. Like,
Yeah,
what things come to mind?
I'd probably go on all day about that. I mean, I see a lot of people who burn cash, poor maintenance on equipment. You know, if you think about how much electricity or water or gas is used in running a restaurant, if you've got fridge and freezer filters that aren't cleaned on a regular basis, you're just killing your compressors. Right? So then the compressors are breaking down every few months. And I've seen operators not put air conditioning in the back of the restaurant because the cooks don't deserve it, right? Okay, well, first of all, there's culture right away. You're telling your staff they don't deserve to be comfortable. But now the ambient environment of that kitchen is 30 degrees or hotter. So all the refrigerators are running in 30 degrees or hotter. So the compressor's running harder, and you're burning more money, and you're just chewing it through. I mean, I've seen all kinds of breaches where, you know, perhaps they decide that the requirement of pest control every 6 months is too much. I'll go once a year. Well, now we have pests, right? We've all read restaurants shut down for cockroaches or
Right.
mice or whatever. I mean, again, we're trying to prevent any sort of issue, not just prevent it getting shut down. We're trying to prevent any contamination in the back of the restaurant. So we have a rule that it's every 6 months or every 3 months, whatever it is. There's rules there for a reason. Follow the rules. But
Some of the franchisees just want to take the shortcuts, cut the
Exactly.
corners, and
Yeah.
the reason why the,
Yeah.
the rules are set in place.
exactly.
Like you're looking for short-term gain, but in the end, they're the ones that get shut down or feel the pain.
I had a guy a few
Yeah.
years ago. He said, dentist was a big scam because dentists tell you to brush your teeth twice a day, but if you only brush it once a day, you can save half the cost of toothpaste in a year.
Right.
But then you're going to have a higher dental bill, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
it's one or the other. You can choose which one you want to cut, right? But a little bit of preventative maintenance goes a long way. If you have the discipline of changing or cleaning your filters every 3 months, changing your aircon, how many people have aircon that have gone 6 months or a year running 24/7 and never get it serviced? And then, it only lasted 2 years. Well, that's a bad brand. No, it's not a bad brand. It's poor maintenance. So
Moving on to Four Fingers, then how and why did you take up that role?
So I was recruited, and it was a great opportunity because I loved the brand when I was a customer and when I was here in the market. I mean, I thought it was a fantastic brand. It was fun. It was different. Food was good. I thought they did a great job, consistent. And I thought it had so much potential, and I still think it has tremendous potential as a brand. Resonates well with the younger crowd. It's not your KFC. It's not your Tender Fresh or Mary's Browns or whatever. It's a younger, hipper brand.
Yep.
And it was a great opportunity. The board, when I joined, or before I joined, we aligned on what we wanted to build the brand, where we wanted to take the brand. It was a culture of people first. We were putting the staff ahead of other needs, if you will. We put a lot of programs in place. We redid the benefits. We reorganized the pay structure so it was a little bit more fair, a little bit more clean, and it was growing. Like, we were getting ready to open in LA. We had 4 other markets that we were in, a franchisee in Thailand that was doing well with it, Indonesia, and I just thought it was a brand that was headed up with a lot more up on the other side. Unfortunately, the owners or the board didn't really have the passion to deliver on what the promises were. So culture started to slide from the top down, and we really had some fundamental disagreements about the way business should be run. I don't want to say ethical breaches because I prevented some of them, but there was some pressure to take some shortcuts that I wasn't comfortable with. So I didn't stay as long as I would have liked with the brand. But it's still a great brand. It still has great structure and bones to it. Just needs the right energy
Guidance
behind it and the right focus on it to grow that into something could be huge. And it would be great to see a homegrown brand. A lot of people don't know it's a Singaporean brand.
Speaking of ethical breaches and just preventing all of that, like what are the values or ethos that you sort of live by or you have in mind when it comes to business? And because I guess many people just get caught up in just wanting to increase shareholder value, and then it's just their MO throughout, right? What's Dave Acton's take on?
I mean, I've kind of gotten to an age or a stage where it's not all about the money anymore. I think somebody I was reading a couple of months ago coined it more as building a lifestyle than building a brand or building a business. There are still people who need to make every dollar they can. They want to build billions and millions and have all the zeros, but what are you going to do with it? Besides rent an entire town in Spain for your wedding, there's really a point where you've got enough money, and I'd rather have the time and the friendships and all the other things that maybe some of those super driven people can't have. So I'm big on doing the right thing, treating people right.
Yeah, 100%. Where would you say has been more memorable for you? which part of the world have you been to that's like really struck a chord?
If I was to say one destination, I really love Cambodia.
Cambodia,
I think the people and the culture, the history,
Mm.
the history of Cambodia. Most people, maybe they've seen the movie The Killing Fields or some of the history, but
Khmer
that was
Rouge.
happening while I was in school,
Right.
and we didn't hear anything. We didn't know. The world didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, yeah. The evils that were happening.
Yeah, and it's a horrible tragedy, but to the people that came out the other end, right? The culture that exists, the welcomingness of the people when I travel there, it's probably the one place where I'm, you think on the surface they have so little and they've come through so much, but they're happy. The economy is working. People are still moving forward, and the optimism is there. And so it's probably the one area that I really
Enjoy going
enjoy
to.
the most in
Right.
Southeast Asia anyway.
Okay.
And it's probably touched me the most over
I
the
see.
years.
I see. Because I think a lot of people would recommend Thailand and like culture of kindness being there. Would you say quite similar, or do they have their own like kind of
It
feel to
reminds
them?
me of what Thailand was like when I first went, 15 years ago. I think Thailand's evolved, and I don't want to put it down because countries evolve, but it's become a little bit more dollar focused.
For sure,
I find
for sure.
the
Commercialization.
commercialized, yeah. And I don't think Cambodia's got that yet. Vietnam is similar. I think they're in between. Vietnam is another place that I really enjoy as well. But I think Thailand still has a lot to offer and is great. But Cambodia is just a little bit newer, a little bit
Nascent.
off the beaten path, or a little bit, yeah. It's still finding its way. It's still evolving, and but yeah.
What are the differences? 'Cause I think you had venture there as well,
Yeah.
like in terms of doing business here, Canada, and in Cambodia. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work in Cambodia, and so I think maybe that's where my affinity for the people comes from, because I know a lot of good
The
people there. But they're they're figuring things out. They're evolving. They're not nearly as sophisticated as, say, Singapore or Hong Kong or other cities are to be, but there's still the passion is there. The underlying, they want to see people happy. I mean, if they're running a restaurant or running food service, they genuinely want people to be happy with the experience. It's not just about making money and trying to take as much as they can. So, it's well worth a visit if you haven't been there yet. So.
and you are also doing some consultancy for the.
Yeah, I still do some work there. I
Right.
have a
Well, what would you call that? Would it be like non-profit NGO kind of things? Like, because I
no,
do
the
hear
work
that-
I'm doing is for profit. I'm doing some personal coaching with an individual there that is trying to adopt to a Western
paradigm.
paradigm. I mean, they're in a franchise business model that
Okay.
they don't quite get the culture of the franchisor. So I'm
Right.
trying to help them bridge
The gap.
between what the franchisor wants and what they need to do to kind of trickle it down and make culture work in the community. So we've been able to reduce turnover. Staff are a lot happier. A lot of stuff we talked about at the beginning. It's not rocket science. It's just going through the process and the discipline and knowing the steps and having done it before. I don't find it super difficult to make the adjustments, and so it's going well. And I've done some behind the scenes efficiency work and supply chain work and things in that market. So
You're coaching a franchisee.
I'm coaching the manager of the franchisee. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Okay,
So it's
manager
a
of
personal coaching because he was really struggling to make those changes and adapt. So it's kind of happenstance that worked out, but it's been successful so far. We're making some good changes to the KPIs, and the business is growing. So
Like a bit of a franchisee consultant.
yeah, it's more personal coaching, but it's in that franchise framework, right? I mean, the challenges that we talk about are not productivity and personal development. It's about developing the franchise system. So kind of a a shoulder for him to reach to. Yeah. So yeah.
And you're still doing that while you're also doing something else, right? OrcaNation.
I did work with OrcaNation for 2 years. It was a contract position
Oh.
while the owner was coming out of COVID. The owner was stuck in Portugal.
Right.
So I ran that business for 2 years, education business. It was a contract. A great brand, great business, got a lot of potential. And but I've stepped away from that. He's back and he runs that business full time. So yeah, kind of a closed chapter on that client. So.
What we say drives you? Like, you've been through much in business, and then you've had so many clients, so many successes. What still drives you to continue on with your consultancy? Because you don't need any more clients.
Well, I get energy from the clients.
Right.
I mean, I've come to that realization that I get the energy from seeing the evolution and usually the uplifting of the business, whether it's the business or the client or however the end result. But I get energy out of that, and I find if I don't have projects and things going on, then I don't have that same energy to get up and get going and make things happen. So I did sort of retire earlier than most of my peer group, and that's a pretty lonely place if your friends are all still working full time, and it's expensive to travel all the time, and my wife still works and loves what she does. So I find it great to fill the time productively. I think is what really I want to do something that's going to give me some return on my energy, and I don't want to. Volunteering is great, but I just get more satisfaction of seeing a business grow or seeing somebody navigate that franchise journey or start their own restaurant or brand. I do some consulting. I've done all kinds of random things, and there's a lot to be learned as well. And I think that's another big thing for me is I'm still learning. I still learn from every client. I learn from every situation, and that's. I hope that never stops. I hope that never gets old. So.
Do you see like a symmetry, some similarities, like running businesses and marriages or relationships, and like how some feel and?
I'm certainly not a marriage expert, so I won't pretend to be, but it's going well. The marriage is good, but I think there are synergies. But I think and often franchising, they'll say buying a franchise like a marriage. I think it's bigger than a marriage because it's very difficult to get out of a franchise relationship if it's not the right fit. You can sell it and hopefully somebody else will take over the problem. You can't sell a marriage in most countries, so it's a different exit strategy. But it's hard when you've got 100 employees or however many, 5 outlets, 20 outlets. That's a lot of money tied up, and that's a lot of people's lives depending on your business, and it's difficult to separate those. I mean, there's been some ugly ones. There's been some successful separations as well, but it's a tough, it's bigger than marriage. I think it's a bigger commitment. So back up front, spend the time, do the due diligence, speak to the other people, and really make sure it's the right fit for you. Or you've got a strategy to exit. Whether it's close it or sell it. Businesses sell, but they're not easy sells. Finding somebody who wants to buy an existing franchise operation sometimes is harder than trying to find a new franchisee.
Okay.
So
Then, if we would time travel just maybe 2 decades, or maybe even 3, what was dating like for you then, with all of these projects going on and businesses too?
20-30 years ago, I mean, things were pre-internet. Was a whole different world. We joke about it all the time, but I remember phoning in to the switchboard during office hours to get messages, right? And in time zones, if you think about being overseas, you've got a phone between 10 at night and 6 in the morning.
Just
right?
to hear their voice.
Now it's you get transcribed messages on your phone, right? I mean, I remember even coming to Asia without Google Maps and without those those things. I remember my first time in Beijing, China, and I navigated completely with a Starbucks map. They had a giveaway map that showed all the Starbucks and all the landmarks. I was working for Dairy Queen, but I was navigating the city with a Starbucks map because that was the only thing that I could put in my pocket, right? We didn't have data plans and Google Maps back then. So the technology is huge. The changes of things. Most of my first jobs, there was no computers. I mean, it was a luxury. It wasn't a given. And now it's like, here's your badge, here's your computer. It's the first thing you get. So yeah, it's a whole different world back then. So and it's exciting to see, the last year, the changes we've seen just in the AI space. But somebody I was talking to a couple of weeks ago about personal assistants and virtual assistants. Do we need those in 2 years? I mean, is motion going to take care of your scheduling, and WhatsApp's going to figure out how to take care of your calls, and AI is going to write your emails? Like, in 2 years,
A lot.
is that going to even be relevant anymore? And where it's going? So it's a fascinating time. And again, I like being part of that. I like figuring out these tools, and systems, and workflows, and what's going to happen. So.
And I think coming on to like now the AI age, right? Where like recently there was this researcher who was on a podcast who was saying that within the next 20 years or even lesser, you're gonna see our future generations be dating like humanoids and robots, and that's the way that love is gonna kind of evolve into. What do you feel about all of those sci-fi storylines plotting out into reality?
It's funny because I was never a sci-fi fan. I never really gravitated to those kind of things. But the more I live it, the more I kind of see
It happening.
things are coming together, right? I mean, I think about the amount of things that are automatic in my house now that used to be manual processes, and from the vacuum to the ice maker to the whatever. It's truly fascinating to me. I mean, I'm a big fan of the tech and watching, seeing what they come up with, and then seeing what it leads to, right? Fascinating. I mean, we've seen the change with Google and podcasting, right? You plug all your research in, and Google generates a podcast for you. So is this going to happen in 2 years? Or are we even going to have podcasts anymore? So I think it's fascinating to see where it's going.
Yeah, it could be just my AI avatar talking to your AI avatar, and it's content created from there.
AI versus AI.
But you plug in your research, and it spits it out the other end, right? So
A knowledge base.
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where it's going to go.
In terms of like F&B, right? How much of that do you think the AI space will maybe not take away, but add value to right now in the current scene, current market, current times, 2025?
Yeah, I think AI can add tremendous value now. I mean, if you think of the ordering process as an example, whether it's Grab or whether it's the kiosk in a restaurant, but in the last 5 years, the amount of data-driven changes to the way menus are displayed and the way websites or apps or whatever, and the impact that has on your average sale, right? The customer, the influence it has on what the customer orders is mind-blowing. I mean, I've seen, as we were going through COVID and brands were transitioning to online ordering that had never done it before, I did a lot of quick work with people tweaking menus, right? And putting different sizes up front and different flavors and connections, and how much of an impact that could have on your basket, right? The average order. So I think one of the fascinating ones for me is using the history with market trends to predict what's next. Like what McDonald's, in the old days, we had to sit around a boardroom and go, okay, let's come up with a new burger. Let's think about a new ice cream flavor. AI would be spitting that out, based on trends, based on patterns, based on history. I would see very soon a point where the large language model is generating menus, and all the things that go with it, right? The menu, the grocery list, the recipes, the chef still has to make it work, but a lot of that mind work that we had to do to get to that, to come up with those new ideas. I think it's all going to be AI very soon. And what will that do? The predictability, the influence it'll have as it changes menus and starts to add flavor lines and menu items to brands that I have never thought about going down those roads.
You've also mentioned that you've had experience, running bars, and I think you still do in certain countries as well. You mentioned, but what do you think of the outlook for Singapore's nightlife? Right, I think there's been tons of articles written recently talking about it's quite inevitable. Like Gen Zs are not drinking, bars are just closing one by one, it's losing a bit of our nightlife culture. And do you ever see us coming out of this rut, or are daytime clubs now becoming a new thing?
I don't see it ever going back to the way it was. I think, and it's not unique to Singapore. Where if you want to go down a rabbit hole, but Google the number of pubs in London or in England, right? The number of pubs that have died out, because that's changed as well. It's a similar trajectory, but I think daytime clubs or after work coffee parties or some of these creative solutions. I don't think we've found or seen the next big thing, but I think it'll never go back to the way it was. I think there'll be a shift into something different. You know, bands were a big deal when I was young because that's the only way you really could hear. You could listen to the tape or listen to the record, but that was the only way you get it. Well, now you stream it. I can go home and watch a Rolling Stones concert tonight. I miss the Crazy Elephant, but we don't need those kind of clubs anymore. But what's going to take its place, right? Is it going to be, bubble tea and island disco where they put the headphones on and, somebody has going to figure it out. And I think people still need a social space. They still need, again, in Singapore, there's the need for gathering places and these get-togethers and something for you to do because, you don't want to go home. And there's an opportunity. It's just what it's going to be. I think about Clarke Quay and the changes it's gone through. And if you haven't been, you should go. But the music shop is the new kind of destination. It's always busy when I go by. People listening, coffee, it's got things going on. Level Up, I think, is a kind of a place that maybe has a future. Maybe they need to tweak their pricing model. Maybe it should be all you can play for $20 or something. But activities and things to do when you get together, that's going to be the next big thing. And I think food will play part of it, F&B will play part of it, but drinking is a dying industry. I mean, I think it's more quality over quantity now. People will have a couple of cocktails or something really cool, but they're not drinking 12 beers and
same way they used
all
to
night like it used to be, right? That's a dying industry, and I don't see that coming back the way it was.
You wanna?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the viewers, I think they also want to know, what you did in, as the Four Fingers ex-CEO. What do you do at 8 months? Maybe you can brag to us some of your accomplishments. Yeah.
So it was an exciting time because there was a lot of energy around building something bigger. And I don't just mean bigger, larger, but building it different brand. We were aligned and committed on putting people first, which was huge, right? The churn rate, which is typically the number of people you hire. Like if you have 100 staff and you lose 10 every week, and you're always hiring and firing. We quickly we reduced that dramatically on a couple of fronts, which was fantastic. We were getting stable employee numbers. I mean, you're always going to have somebody, they graduated, they're going away. Yeah. That's fine. People leave. That's okay. But when they're just jumping from your stall to the next outlet, right? I mean, F&B labor is difficult because if you're treating me bad in the outlet, and outlet next door says we're hiring, I can literally jump over the little wall and change my shirt and get a better job. So you really have to have your culture down. So we made a lot of advancements there. A lot of changes to the pay structure, which just made it fair and more equitable. We created a marketing calendar. We had a pipeline of new products that we created, not just food, not just different flavors of chicken, but new products bring new trial. Bringing back old products brings back old customers, but you need that trial. You need those people to come in. Even if they don't get the new product, it's a reason for them to go, oh yeah, the brand still exists, right? So the brand had not had any sort of product development, so we put that structure in place and a pipeline of new products. We were trying a bunch of different things to expand the
Menu?
size of the guest check. The menu, yes, but also the size of the guest check. We launched Chickless chicken wings, which was a co-promotion with Quorn, which is a
Vegan.
vegan.
version.
So we had vegan chicken strips, which was huge. It was great
Unheard
success for
at that
us.
time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, this was before Impossible Meat. It was before any of that stuff. So I like to say we were a bit of a pioneer at that. I actually spoke at a meatless convention, and it was one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about. One of the, if not the first brand to really launch any sort of meatless product or vegan. And then expansion. Excited to see where we'd gone. We had changed our franchising philosophy, and we're really starting to make some traction there, and continued after I left. And I was pretty proud about a lot of the things that we did because they kept going after I left. So, you always want to see something you do well, but you want to see it continue, right? It's not just me. So the team was a big, we retooled the team, brought in a leadership team that, and elevated some of the existing staff. And it's great to see them continue and the success they had, and then watch them go off. It's almost like you go off to somewhere else.
It's like you
right?
set in stone all these things, and then they actually went ahead to
Yeah, you put things in place, and,
Yeah.
and then you create the team that continues to deliver. So a lot of good things happen there.
like really, creating a legacy for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a tiny chapter in the history of Four Fingers, but it's still good to see. I mean,
Hope
it was
they
exciting.
still give you some credit for. I think staff turnover is like a very big thing because training, hiring, retraining, it's a huge drain
So-
on company resources.
And it's such a disruption to
Yeah.
day to day, right? If you're always dealing with new staff coming in, and again, typically you're short staffed, nobody ever gets far enough ahead, right? So they're always trying to catch up, and then it just disrupts the flow, just upsets the customers, disrupts the processes, and it's such a flat tire on the organization every day. So it needs to be something you're always ahead of. Really trying to train, cross train, and just keep building that stable of
Reducing
talent.
attrition is super important,
Yeah.
and also like employee loyalty also to
Yeah.
your business. Like they want to be proud that hey, I'm working for this brand.
Yep.
Just like another company.
Yeah, I mean, staff will leave. It's not always the dollar, right? I mean, I've seen brands open up and they go around and they pay $1 more per hour than somebody else, and you would expect there'd be a big jump, but I see people leave because they have better uniforms. I don't like what you make me wear, so I'm going to go work there. But it's valid. You can't. And brands like McDonald's and Tim Hortons spent millions of dollars developing designer uniforms that the staff are comfortable in, right? They're proud to wear on the street. And at the same time, I see brands that say, "Oh, it's just wear what you want, t-shirt and jeans." Well, now I've trashed my good clothes, right? So you don't pay me enough to wear my good jeans or my good shoes. So that's if you don't have a good uniform program, that can be a detriment too. And all the perks that go with it, meal plans, and things like that. I've seen people quit and go somewhere else because the food was better. The staff meal was better. That's fixable. You can make changes.
There's many things that go beyond just like the wages and the
Yeah,
salary.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people will blame the wage, but there's a lot more to it. And digging into why people leave. Exit interviews are a huge asset or initiative of brand. One of the best things they can do is do an exit interview, do a third-party exit interview if you need to, so that they don't have to speak to the manager they don't like, but get that honest feedback from people and learn from it. Action it.
Envisioning I think like Beyond Meat has been quite a roller coaster ride for most investors, right? Seeing the stock prices just ride the trend and going through the ups and downs, and Corn being another company trying to tap on the vegan market as well. I think there's a certain niche of listeners out there that's thinking of starting out their own vegan restaurant or going to F&B in that sense of space. What's your view on how they should kind of, I guess, overcome certain limitations that maybe the general public is not so educated about? Or what would the play be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if your vision, and we go back to mission vision, if your vision is that you want a restaurant that stands on its own and is either ethically or, whatever your criteria are, there's a great vegetarian restaurant in Holland V, Original Sin, that's been there for a long time, and they do extremely well. And it's not in your face. I mean, they have great meals. They have great wine lists. I mean, it's an experience. You don't really know you're missing something. I think that's the thing that I always struggle with when I see brands push too hard into vegan or vegetarian or whatever, is taste just like something else is usually the position, right? Well, what's the benefit? Why do I want that? Am I paying more? Because for a long time we were paying more. So I'm paying more to get something that tastes like something else. Well, why? Why am I doing that? Now, if I'm ethically or morally centered and that's important to me, then great, I'll do that. But that's a difficult business strategy to
pitch.
Focus on those people who are willing to pay more for something. So I think it has to stand on its own. And Quorn, as the example, go back to Four Fingers, chicken wings, we called them. They were the only, at the time on the menu, they were the only chicken strip on the menu. We couldn't make a bone-in vegan chicken wing. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not gonna work. So we offered boneless chicken strips that happened to be vegan. So there's a big percentage of the population that doesn't like to mess with the bones. So there was an opportunity on the menu for a category, and that's why I think it was so successful, because people who didn't want to mess with chicken wings and bones would just order that because it tastes good. Oh, it happened to be vegan, okay, but it also, it was just a boneless thing, right? So I think that was one of the successes of our strategy, was offering something that's still bone and different on the menu. That's a whole unique selling proposition, wasn't just that it was vegan or bone or meatless. And I think that's the play. If you're going to create a restaurant or a destination that's going to be different and you want it to be meatless or porkless or whatever, then it needs to stand on its own. If you think of halal as an example, so many great halal restaurants, you don't miss pork. Right? I mean, if you're not practicing halal,
you wouldn't
have
even
no
think
problem going there because it's fantastic, great food. But when they try to imitate bacon on a burger and it just doesn't taste right, you're pushing water uphill, as we sort of say, right? So just make it stand on its own, and with the limitations you put in, that's fine, but make it a standalone product that anybody would want to buy. The craveability needs to be there. The desirability needs to be there. Then I think you're setting yourself up for success.
Last question for me. If you had to start again from zero, you lose your consultancy company, lose all the experiences you had, you only have your right now and what you know, your experiences and your knowledge, how would you start again to rebuild your wealth and career and things like that? And you can't say consultancy.
Well, I think a couple things. There's a couple of thoughts come to mind. I read a book a couple of weeks ago by a guy who was sort of asked the same question. And his comment, which resonated with me, so I'll steal it, was sell something. Think about what you can make and sell. So you're exchanging something for value one way or the other. It could be a service, so whether it was cutting grass, cleaning windows, or doing something, but you're selling something and you're getting tangible, you're giving something tangible and you're getting value back. The problem with consulting is sometimes you're just selling air and ideas, right? So if you don't have experience and credibility and a track record, then it's very difficult to set that up. So I would probably look for something I could sell that would work, whether it was buying a product from somewhere else and being the guy who distributes it here. Go to China, find something, put it on Shopee, make it work, or a service where you're providing a service of some kind. AI is great, but not everybody's going to make their own the right use of it. So maybe there's a service to be created where you're using AI to deliver things to people. Don't know. I'd have to put some thought into it, but I think that to me is the biggest thing is selling something. You've got to be providing value for what you want people to give you. And then either make that a job or find a job along that lines or create your own business doing it. I mean, if you're good at AI, then go get a job at a video company where you're using AI, making AI generated thumbnails. But take your skill and then find a job where you're delivering that.
Awesome.
If you could rewind time, 20 years ago, would you have done anything differently?
Well, aside from buying Apple stock earlier or some of those things.
Bitcoin.
But, or Bitcoin. I still remember laughing at Bitcoin, but I don't know if I would do anything dramatically different, to be honest. I mean, I am so much more from the experiences I've had, the restaurants that I've opened and closed, money I made, money I lost. I mean, wins and losses, but it gives me all the background, the credibility, the empathy. When I deal with people who are setting up a restaurant now, or thinking about buying a restaurant, or thinking about buying a franchise, or I've been there and I've done that, so I've been in their shoes. So there's not a lot in my experience that I wouldn't want to go through again if I was going to try and get to the similar destination.
If you actually say I am a franchisor, what would be like the perfect franchisor?
For me to work with, or if you're just setting up to be it's having flexibility. I mean, having your system in place, right? Your SOPs buttoned down, but listening to the franchisees. If you go down the McDonald's rabbit hole or Dairy Queen or other things, Blizzard, which is Dairy Queen's famous ice cream, was invented by a franchisee. The slush puppy or whatever you call that 7-Eleven Slurpee was invented by a Dairy Queen franchisee. The filet of fish was invented by a McDonald's franchisee. Big Mac was invented by a McDonald's franchisee. Like, so many things came from the franchisee. So if the franchisor won't listen, then they miss out on those. So I think having their business buttoned up, that 80%, 90% there, but then listening to the franchisees in the market they go in, or JV if they're doing a joint venture. But, we talk a lot about Starbucks in Australia falling. When they moved there, they wouldn't listen. You can't go to Australia and tell Australians how to drink coffee. They have figured it out. They have perfected it. Starbucks didn't listen, and then they collapsed. They fell apart. And then they tried again, and they still didn't listen. So, it's like the third time, maybe they'll get it right. But listen to the locals when you're entering a market. If you're bringing a brand to a market, and try to figure out how to make those pieces fit. What is the local flavor, taste profile, something different that you need to be aware of when you come into that market.
It's like giving all the systems and support, but yet still having the humility to learn,
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, right? Listen and get that feedback. Because there's local nuances that you as a franchisor from another country are never going to understand. And your franchisee is on the ground listening to the customers every day. They're at the front counter, or they're at the table, they're in the kitchen. They're the ones that are going to have that quality feedback to bubble up what the trends are, what the tastes are, what the likes and dislikes are. And that's the only way you can learn and then evolve the brand to be more in line with what it needs to be here.
Everything that each franchisee learns, you take it back and then you make the whole franchise even bigger.
If it resonates, right? I mean, I often use chili sauce at McDonald's as an example. Outside of Southeast Asia, there's no chili sauce. You can't get chili sauce at McDonald's.
Ketchup.
It's ketchup. It's tomato ketchup. But in Singapore, if you go to McDonald's, there are 2 chili sauce to 1 ketchup pump, 2-to-1 ratio. If they hadn't listened to the local operators and made that decision and let that come in, would McDonald's be as good as it is? I mean, it's a key part of the experience when you get fries at McDonald's is the chili sauce.
Yeah.
Why would you cut that out? Why would you not listen to what those, other brands come in and they're like, nope, this is the way we do it. So and they don't do well.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dave, for so much insights and just absorbing all of the things that you've been saying and advising business owners. I hope that they feel and also appreciate things that we've been discussing. I'm Nick from Titan AI, Leo from
Training agency.
There We Go. And how can they find you, Dave?
Sure.
How,
Easiest is CANnect.Asia, CANnect.Asia is the website, and they can find me there, look me up, book an appointment, give us a call, whatever you want to do.
awesome. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.